your games past the time. Here's what to keep in mind. What you're seeing is really real, and it truly is a big deal.
Hello, friends. Welcome. My name is Googli Bear Jr., also known as Elizabeth, here on the lovely internet. This is going to be a fun podcast. We have our first guest on this platform, Googli versus the World, and this is where we talk about video games and how they may look like if they were to be real in real life. And last week we talked about, we did the dabble between MMORPGs, and we talked about old school RuneScape, and we are going to continue that journey talking about Star Wars: The Old Republic. Now, this is a game that I have never played, but I would now really, really like to as I was doing my research. And since I don't know much about it, we have a fancy guest who was also part of my streaming community and a really near and dear friend of mine, and who is also going to start streaming soon. So look out for that. And Gecko, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, no worries. So, I'm Gecko. Been a Star Wars: The Old Republic player for 8 years now, maybe a little bit longer. Done pretty much all there is to do in this. I still love the game. I still play relatively daily. Just it's just one of those games which once you're into, there is so much which you can do to explore. It's absolutely incredible.
Mm-hmm. So tell us a little bit more about the game. I know it's an MMORPG.
Mhm.
And I know that it was made by BioWare. And it was announced on October 21st of 2008. But tell me a little bit more of what's the basics of the game.
Okay, so BioWare have been developing this almost like combat role system, which they use for the game for quite a while now. The original game which they released, which had the basics of what later became Star Wars: The Old Republic, was a game called Knights of the Old Republic, which was released, I believe, in about 2003.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the game itself was entirely story-based RPG, in that you played one protagonist and you took his story from humble beginnings into legend, visiting various worlds, visiting. I'll get my words out in a minute.
That's okay.
Visiting various different areas which you still sort of see in the movies. So you had places like Tatooine, you also had Kashyyyk, you had a couple other planets which weren't in the movies. However, they are definitely part of the legends of Star Wars,
Mm-hmm.
and they brought those ideas into a game. They brought that into the general audience, and once it came out, there was basically no looking back. It was released, and everyone said how absolutely fantastic it was, because the graphics and everything, the combat graphics, were
Yeah.
so much better than what you had just generally. Um, where graphics could be very glitchy and you didn't get that sort of element of realism with them. With this one, they did do an attempt to do realistic fight scenes and that sort of thing. The
Mm-hmm.
only downside was that's the fighting that they used in it was turn-based fighting. So, say one person strikes, then the other person strikes, then you strike, then the other person strikes.
Okay.
From there, they developed it. They increased their computer rate, as it were, and they started to become more and more leaning towards that open world MMO RPG style, following more in the lines of World of Warcraft, that sort of combat style, because they realized how popular World of Warcraft was after they released the KOTOR where World of Warcraft came about.
Mm-hmm.
That's when they started to develop. Why don't we take this the next stage further? Because once KOTOR 1 came out, they thought that was it. That's the only game we're going to do. But then a company called Obsidian came in and took over the Knights of the Old Republic name, and they created the Sith Lords game, Knights of the Old Republic Sith Lords, and that again went down an absolute storm. Same sort of, it was the same gameplay, as it were, different characters, different story, but again, it was revisiting some of those other planets and really taking that story to the next stage. Eventually, they sort of said, well, what's to lose? And they started working on Star Wars: The Old Republic.
That makes a lot of sense because, like, even through my research, like, it had 1 million subscribers within 3 days of it launching. And it's now determined as the world's fastest growing MMO ever, which that makes me feel dumb that I've never heard of this until I met you. And you're like, do you play this? And I'm like, play what? And it makes complete sense that if this game grows so fast, they would even want to branch out into books and comics, and then which makes me feel a little sad that, like, the movies you would think of that are so popular, like, why haven't I heard about this till now? Even if this is the before, like, it kind of puts, like, the nerds into the shadows a little bit of just like if you're a true diehard Star Wars fan, like, I thought I was into Star Wars, but, like, now I don't feel like I am because I've never played or heard this game before I met you. And I've known you for about a little over a year now. So it just makes me feel a little bit like a weenie. But that's okay.
But yeah, the trouble is that where you get that sort of thing is that there's two people which are in fans of Star Wars. You get people who say, I'm a true loyalist to Star Wars, namely anything that George Lucas creates, anything that is in the movies, that is the only Star Wars I want, that's the only Star Wars I care about. But then you get the other ones who are just what's known as Star Wars nuts, because the fact you get to the point where you're like, what else could I add to this? What else is there? I mean, you say there's a galaxy far, far away, or long time ago in the galaxy far, far away, and it's like, what else is there? We know this is a long time ago, but what about before then? Because every society has a history to it, you know. It's like all said and done, right? You can imagine it as being almost like related to the War of Independence in America, you know, like Britain was the colonial rulers, but Britain wanted to break away from that. So in essence, you could liken the empire as the colonial rulers and the rebels of the Americans wanting to break away from that. But what led up to that? What's the history behind that? How long had this sort of rivalry between the light and dark been going on? And that's where the legends of Star Wars started to come about. The history behind the movies, which was, although it wasn't written directly by George Lucas, or he didn't really have a hand in it as such, he gave creative license to those who wanted to do it. He oversaw it, you know. So as such, like any book which is published with the Star Wars title on it always has to go through Skywalker Ranch, you know. It always has to go through that authentication process. Although it might not make it into the official canon, it is something which is Star Wars. It is something which can become canon later on. But it's just one of those things which it happens. And of course, KOTOR and the games ensuing are all Legends material.
Okay.
You know, but they've got that Star Wars logo on it.
So, from what I understand from the game, this happens 3,600 years before the events of the films. And you choose 3 different roles. You're either a tank, a damage, or you're a support. But, like, what do you initially do in those 3 roles? Like, what's the plot line you're trying to follow as you go through all these different storylines and travel through all these worlds?
Okay, so where it comes to the player roles like tank, damage, and heal, those 3 aren't actually the focus on the game and the story.
Okay.
Those are roles which you do if you're going to be partaking in group events. However, the majority of the game is solo play and solo story.
Oh.
The game itself was designed as it was with KOTOR and KOTOR 2, was that you would play the main protagonist of your story, and play the Star Wars game with the whole story running right the way through it. There was extras and elements added onto that, in which you could have this MMO world. You could play like in World of Warcraft. You get dungeons, you get like world bosses and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
With Star Wars, is exactly the same, only they are called operations instead of dungeons.
Huh.
These side quests, although they do add to the story a little bit, it gives you a bit more lore about the game.
Mm-hmm.
It is not essential for you to play the game. You don't have to play in the team. You don't have to play with a guild. You can do it all by yourself if you want to.
Okay.
It's one of those games which gives so much flexibility that you basically control what you want to do. If you want to go all out PvP or doing dungeons, operations, and all that sort of thing, you can do.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not necessary.
Okay.
But generally speaking, what they tend to look at more so is what's known as story classes. So you get 8 different story classes. You get a Jedi Knight, a Jedi Consular,
Mm-hmm.
a Republic Trooper, a Smuggler who's also linked with the Republic.
Okay.
Then you get Sith Warrior, Sith Inquisitor, Imperial Agent, and Bounty Hunter who's linked to the Imperials.
Mm-hmm.
Through that, you get to play individual stories based on those 8 characters. Each story is different. So, with that, with the, say, Jedi Knight, you can operate as a tank or a damage role player. Generally speaking, you just play the open world, the initial world that you go into. So, like with Jedi Knight, the initial world is Tython.
Okay.
There, you get to learn the dynamics of the game. You also get to start your story there as well. So you start working your way from Padawan into Knight stage in that world, and it takes off from there. Then you travel. Once you get past that stage, you travel to the main home world of Coruscant, and do your story there. Then you branch out into the wider galaxy. So I can't remember how many worlds they've actually imprinted in the game. I'm just trying to
When I
remember
was
from
doing
the
my
story.
research, I counted like 15.
Oh, there's a lot more than that.
Yeah, like but I can definitely be wrong. But what role did you choose, or do you play in a guild, or do you prefer solo?
So myself, generally speaking, when I'm playing every day, I do play quite a lot of solo missions. Because there is still, even if you complete the story stage, there's still a lot more that you can do and discover in the game.
Mm-hmm.
I am part of guilds. I am part of the roleplay community in Star Wars as well. So that's where you can forget about all your in-game abilities. You're literally just writing and rolling as you would do with like Dungeons and Dragons.
That's
you know?
literally so cool.
So it has that element to the game. So I am a part of that community. But generally speaking, like I tend to play tank myself. Like when I have a character class which does have that option for tanking.
You are the protector.
Yeah, in essence, because myself personally, I prefer, instead of going in there burst damage and then getting killed instantly, I'd rather be able to sit there, take damage, absorb damage, and be that support role rather than anything else. You know, because I know how to build up my character to take a lot of damage. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and also self heal. So for myself personally, I do like that tank role because the fact it does give you that ability that you can just stand there
Mm-hmm.
and take the damage, give a bit of damage in return, but generally speaking, you're allowing others to feed off you, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, that makes sense to me. I know we talked previously, just for before we even started this podcast and I brought this idea to you to have any sort of understanding. that we're talking about the different planets because like you said previously, like they say in the opening credits, oh, in a galaxy far, far away, and they never talk about, like, we're maybe introduced to 5 or 6 even in the films, like
Yeah.
and there's a plethora of planets in this MMORPG. But the one we focused on, or we talked about, that you're really introduced to is the planet of Terrace. Could you tell me more about that?
So yeah, there was two that I believe we talked about. There was Taris and Tatooine, wasn't there?
Yes.
So, but I mean, Taris was a world which, in KOTOR 1 is where you're first introduced to it.
Mhm.
It's a city planet, very much like Coruscant, as you see in the movies, where the entire planet is mostly city. However, it does have pockets of what's known as the Promised Lands, which is mentioned in KOTOR 1. It's little ecosystems in amongst the city, which basically those are the upper levels have no idea even exist. They've become so set in their ways that they hate, they even hate any alien life form, just generally, whether that be sort of as you see the Twi'leks or Togruta that you see in the movies. They
Yeah.
absolutely hate them as pretty much all just a human only
What the heck?
inhabitants. Um, so they've lost touch with a lot of reality, and it gives the whole planet just generally a feeling of loss.
Mm-hmm.
There's no balance anymore. It can tip either way. Before really that the planet could almost implode on itself, the Sith, Darth Malak, destroyed the surface of
Oh my
Taris. I'm
god.
saying this. I'm saying this as spoilers anyway. I'm just saying, all right. Um, but he completely destroyed the surface of Taris with bombarding it.
Do you know how
When
he,
we get to,
just out of curiosity, do you know what exactly they used to bombard it? That's just my nerdy perspective. I just want to know.
well, yeah, because the main protagonist of the story ended up on Taris.
Okay.
Um, unto like unbeknownst to him,
Hmm.
is actually an enemy of Malik, even though he didn't realize it at the time.
Yeah.
So the destruction of the planet was to destroy the two of the main characters, because he couldn't find them. So just destroy the planet, wipe them off the face of the galaxy.
Yeah.
So he didn't have to worry about it. This
What was the aftermath of all that destruction? What did the world look like then?
Once the planet was destroyed, the population was basically completely wiped out, apart from maybe a few that survived.
Hmm.
Um, there was a plague which used to affect the planet, which was created by the Sith eons before Malik even did anything there. Created the populace known as the Rat Ghouls.
Huh.
Now, the Rat Ghouls were mutants,
Hmm.
people who they were actually humans that got infected by this plague and got turned into mindless monsters, basically.
Oh my god.
So, yeah, it's almost like a zombie sort of
And that's really
equivalent.
interesting because like even with climate change happening and it going all about, there could be bacteria or viruses that are stuck in the ice that we may not have been exposed to yet, and as climate change
Yeah,
encourages, like we're gonna see them. And that there's a theory to that's how COVID became about, was because it came out from and the reasoning was climate change because we weren't introduced it before, but it's a different strain of something else. But that's just one thing that
yeah.
we were not prepared for in the future is the mystery bacteria that are stuck in the North and South Pole that we're gonna find soon eventually.
Well, the thing is, you don't even have to look at the North and South Pole. You just have to look in any graveyard in Europe,
Hmm.
because the Black Death was only in the like 1500s when it was like really at its height. There are still active populaces of Black Death in the ground.
Yes.
There's still active germs, and if they get disturbed, then that releases the Black Death back into the environment.
Fantastic.
So, well, but that's the thing. The majority of those who have been affected are actually buried so deep under a layer of lead as well to stop the bacteria from escaping.
Oh.
But it only needs one little event, say, namely, like if war started, say, in between certain countries, which is threatening to at the moment, one bomb in a graveyard could release that bacteria again,
Oh my
you
god.
know? So it's one of those things which, like with Taris, a cataclysmic event released the rat gall plague again into the populace, into the wider populace. And in essence, the planet became zombified. However, with that as well, it gave the planet a chance to recover.
Huh.
It gave the plant, although the city itself was completely destroyed, you would think that because it was, with it being a city as well, so densely concreted and everything else, no, it's given that planet a chance to rebuild itself from the inside out and start to clean itself.
That's actually pretty cool.
So
And I think that's what people noticed when COVID hit and we all shut down is like the world was starting to rebuild itself. There was like that one turtle species found in the Galapagos. It just like appeared out of nowhere. And we thought it was extinct, and it's like, just kidding, I'm alive. We're all like, what?
yeah.
Because the population decreased. There was not a lot of human disturbance or interaction, and like the carbon dioxide levels started to begin to go down, and all that. So, but it's of course going to ramp back up once the world starts to reopen again. And
Yeah.
this would be the perfect time to start making change. But that's up to the world to decide within these 10 to 15 years.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. It's one of those things, though, unfortunately, is that as human population increases, there's going to be more and more environmental impacts because of it. Because humans, as a nature, we don't care what happens to the environment as long as we get to expand. That's been the human nature for years. It's only now that they're starting to realize that what they are doing is harmful, but it's not going to change overnight. That's where they need much help as possible from people to make that change, Because, I
Yeah.
mean, to get 9 billion people to change their minds like a snap of the fingers is not going to happen,
No. That's one thing I did find interesting during our conversation is like I asked you how these people get around because you have so many planets and so many limited resources, especially in space where things just kind of exist at a limited amount because it's space. There's not much regeneration, and of course there's like not much water either. That they get over and around through public transport and how like or shuttles, and there's like some personal starships, but like mainly the idea is public transportation, and that's like the majority. Even if you do need like light speed or for hyperdrive, like it's acknowledged that there's major transportation is the way to go, and I just found that really interesting. And like how do you think players in the MMORPG kind of like look at the public transportation in the game? Do they find it a nuisance, or do they actually kind of enjoy having the time talking to other people?
I don't really know, to be honest, because all said and done, like when it comes to public transportation with regards the game itself,
Yeah.
um, there's almost like a taxi system which they use to get around planet, like on the planets, getting to this one, that one. But each player has their own personal starship as part of their story. However, what I always liken to it is that each world is no different to Earth in regards to the populace. I mean, just take this for example. You and me, we have a car, we get about in it, but we use public transport, like to go to maybe, like if we wanted to go for a day trip somewhere and there's not a lot of parking or whatever, we just use public transport or whatever, or walk down there.
Mhm.
You got to remember, each of these worlds are exactly the same as us in that regard. Not everyone is multi-trillionaires, you know.
Yeah.
So if you take a personal starship, that's the equivalent of having your own personal jet.
Oh
You know,
God.
it's not something which you'll have commonplace just generally. So how do you get about? You get on a plane. You get
Mhm.
on a economy plane to go across to the other countries. You know, it's exactly the same with regards to Star Wars. You can use that sort of transport system to get from planet to planet, or if you have got or get from place to place on the planet side, or if you have got enough money, then you can use the transport to get to other planets. You know,
Mhm.
it's the same as if you're hitching a ride on an aeroplane. The difference being is that with the Star Wars universe, they are sustainable in their activities that they do. They have set worlds developed purely for agriculture. They have set worlds which are strictly mining and other things like that. So it works out as a balanced ecosystem for with regards populace to thrive throughout the whole galaxy. You know, it's I think if I remember correctly, there was about 3 worlds which supplied Coruscant just itself um, with farmed materials. You
Okay.
know, like farmed vegetables and things
Yeah.
like that. So it was those worlds were specifically dedicated to farming. You know, that was all they did. They didn't have any other industry on the planet.
Mhm. My
So
last. Oh, sorry.
yeah,
Continue.
no, carry on.
I would say my last question. Because we are soon to be wrapping up for our episode, which is really sad. Do you think humans, since like this is such an adaptive game to the human population, do you really think that humans can live in space just like the MMORPG? Just for a fun question. I was just curious. like, um,
What we have to remember is that although it says a long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, they were so much more technically advanced than we are now. You
mhm,
know, so much could be different in our world in order to get to that level.
mhm,
However, the one thing that I always recognize is the fact we're talking about just our solar system.
yes.
Like with regards ourselves, we're Earth. Is it possible to live on Mars? Who knows? The thing is, but the thing is, what we've got to remember is that they're talking about a galaxy of billions and billions of planets.
Yes.
You know, multiple solar systems.
Mhm,
So it's quite possible that they do have that in this galaxy, in the Milky Way galaxy,
mhm.
there are other Earth-like worlds where you have the same breathable air, you have the same breathable, drinkable water, you have the same ecosystem on that planet.
Yeah.
The only thing I would say is that time will tell in that regard.
I think I
If we
would
could,
agree. Because like for those who are listening, first of all, thank you. Um, and there is no mushrooms on Mars. That's a lie. What you see on there, those aren't mushrooms. And we still there is some sorts of remnants of water on Mars to say that it was a planet, which is kind of like what we were talking about earlier. How things could be thriving and then it changes, but um I just wanted to clear that up. Um, that Mars does not grow shrooms, friends. My bad. That was really upsetting me through a while. Like everyone's like, oh my god, there's life on Mars, and I'm like, no, there isn't. It's not real. These aren't real. But yeah.
we still don't know a lot about Mars. You know, we're only just beginning to explore the surface of it.
hmm
I mean, there are tests which say that yes, it was an Earth-like world once, but the thing is, what you also got to remember, there's a delicate balance between life and death in the galaxy.
Yeah.
Like, just say the Earth, for example, if it was, say, 2,000 miles closer to the sun,
hmm
it would burn up on one side. You know, it would burn up. if it was 2,000 miles the other way, it would start to freeze. You
Yeah.
know, it's such a delicate balance that life on Earth can survive. Whether or not Mars could be a part of that, whether or not it would ever be too cold really to have a sustainable life,
Hmm.
we don't know. That's the answer, you know.
Yeah.
We really don't know because the fact the scientific journals are only saying so much. I have hope and belief that we can start to expand and learn more about the galaxy,
Hmm.
but we are only just starting to learn about our own solar system, let alone the galaxy and the universe beyond it.
Yeah.
So it's, yeah, just have to see what happens in that regard.
My last quick question, I guess. My last question, I guess, wasn't my last question. Do you think SWTOR, this MMORPG, or even the Galaxy film, Star Wars in general, do you think that will push space exploration further because it's gotten people curious about it?
Oh, definitely. I mean, all said and done, a lot of the people who are scientists now or have studied cosmos and things like that started because of Star Wars or
Mm-hmm.
Star Trek. You know, those two programs have a lot to answer for with regards to our modern discovery and modern age. You
Yeah.
know, just because as soon as they saw plasma bolts being shot from rifles and lightsabers and everything else, they thought, "Is this possible? Is this ever possible in real life?"
Mm-hmm.
And it sparks that creativity, sparked that interest into the into the more grand scheme of things. So I would say yes, definitely. Star Wars has a lot to answer for with regards boosting our own technological advances, and just general interest in space, general interest in what the world has to offer beyond our own.
Yeah. Okay. That's cool. That's a great answer. You would say it better than I would ever think of. But I want to appreciate you taking your time for answering these questions, hanging out with me, talking about video games and what the world would look like if they were real. um, because that's what this podcast is about. And thank you for being interested to even talk about it with me. Is there
Anytime.
any place where if someone wanted to catch up with you, and talk about this further, is there a place we could find you?
Yeah, I mean, my Discord channel, if they're or my Discord username is always available if people want to message me through that. Generally speaking, I'm going to be starting up, hopefully streaming, so I will be getting a little server going for that. So I'll put
Yay!
I'll send you through anyway a link to that anyway,
Okay.
and see what happens from there. Really.
If not, also, Gecko is part of my streaming community as well. So if you are a part of my community or would like to be, my Discord link is down below. And my streaming link is also down below, along with any references that we may have used during this podcast. Again, Gecko, I want to appreciate you with your time and how knowledgeable you are and how passionate you are about this game. And I think for sure since even you helping me with my Sith cosplay and you have definitely assured me that I will be downloading this game. I don't know how much I will be playing it because it does sound like a big commitment, but it will be on my PC, it will be on my computer, and to be honest, I'll probably stream it at some point. So
Do it. Do it.
it just sounds so cool. But again, thank you. Is there anything else you would like to say to the world?
Just thank you for taking the time to listen. Anyway.
Yeah, anytime. You're a sweet being. And for those who think Gecko is dumb for anything he says, I will fight you. I will personally ban you. Gecko is the sweetest being that you could ever meet, and he's really, really cool. So when he does start streaming, please go check him out. His content is going to be fantastic. His personality is so welcoming, and I highly, highly recommend hanging out with him. So I think this is the end. I've never had a guest, so I don't know how to end it. But for those listening, I want to appreciate your time. All of our links are down below if you would like to look into this game more. If you would like to find us more, please take care of yourself. Go stretch, take some noms, take your meds, refill your meds, take a nap, get something to eat, a little snacko, or even just get up and stand for a quick minute. Your health is very important. You are important, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you so much, friends, for hanging out, and I will see you next week.
Bye.
With your games past the time, here's what to keep in mind. What you're seeing is really real, and it truly is a big deal.